Good afternoon to everybody, and welcome back to our webinar series. This is our third webinar in the series that RoboVent has developed on the topic of weld fumes. I'm Jim Reed, General Manager here at RoboVent. I'd like to thank you all again for taking the time out of your busy days to join us again. And to the new listeners, thank you very much for joining and welcome. Today's webinar will start with a brief review of the last two presentations, just very briefly. How weld fumes are formed, the impact of weld fumes to worker health and safety, which we've discussed in a lot greater detail in the last two presentations. If you did miss that, we will be emailing out the link, and I think Randy is going to put it here in the chat box also, that you can click on to listen to the prior two webinars. We'll then move on very quickly to a brief review of the two ways weld fumes can be removed from the breathing air, how they can be captured. This will be discussed in a lot greater detail in the next two webinars. We'll just touch on it briefly. The next two webinars will be Thursday this week on source capture, and then next Wednesday on ambient fume extraction systems and how to design a system that works. Then we'll talk about what happens next, and we'll talk about the filtration versus exhaust. And once you're capturing the fumes, what do you do with it? That's the purpose of today's webinar. Do you filter it? Do you exhaust it? And what are the pros and cons of each, or the hidden side effects that you want to watch out for when you're exhausting air that often catches by surprise? So after that, we'll discuss the different types of filtration systems and how to choose the right one, what works the best in welding, and then we'll conclude with a question and answer session. Today we have a new guest on with us today. Gordon Diener is our VP from the West region. Gordon's responsibility is designing and implementing fume extraction systems in all types of applications. He's been doing this for over a decade, comes with a wealth of knowledge, real-life experience. And we also have, again, with us, Mike Meyer. Mike is a 25-year veteran of the industrial ventilation industry and is also an instructor at the Michigan and North Carolina Industrial Ventilation Conferences. So welcome, Gordon and Mike. We're glad to have you on.
Thank you all for joining, everybody.
So just a brief overview of weld fume sources. Again, this has been discussed in much greater detail, but for the new listeners, cover some key points. 85% of the fumes come from the electrode. So the electrode is where the bulk of the fume generation is coming from. So it's the substances in the electrode that causes that is what the fume is made from. And of that, let's say you're burning 1,000 pounds of weld wire, about 10 to 20 pounds on average will turn into smoke. So 1 to 2% typically. If you're doing flux core or stick welding, that number can go up to 5 to 7%. The particle sizes range from 0.1 to 5 microns. The bulk of them are under 2 microns, and the vast majority around 0.5 to 1.0 microns. So to give you an idea of how small a micron is, a human hair is about 100 microns in diameter. So if you can take one of your hairs and lay it on your paper there, you could line up 200 weld fume particles head to tail behind it, and it would hide behind that hair. Incredibly small, extraordinarily small particles that we're trying to capture, and that's why they're so dangerous, because they can go into your lung and actually go straight into your bloodstream. So they're not actually being filtered out, you might say, by your lung like a typical dust might be. Variables, what can affect the percentage of weld fume that turns into smoke, some of the different types of welding processes, the base metal and the filler metals, what the rod is actually made of. Obviously, we mentioned flux core can have a much higher weld fume content, weld fume result, and then surface coatings, galvanized, different types of anti-spatter, and so on can increase the weld fume being generated.